Hey Dunchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and it is time, finally, for a review of the debut album from Pierce Fulton, Better Places. Pierce Fulton is a producer, a DJ, a multi-instrumentalist, a vocalist, you name it, Pierce Fulton has probably done it before. However, Fulton is probably best known for his very unique take on electro house music, notably his single Kuwaga, which came out in late 2014. And I'll be honest, it did take me a number of listens to really get into this thing and fully appreciate it, but I'll tell you, once the song finally clicked with me, it was so worth it. And now I look back at Kuwaga as probably one of my all-time favorite electro house songs, probably next to like Porter Robinson's Language. It's that high up for me. And Pierce actually did remain within the electro house genre for quite a while, just managing to take unique spins and use innovation wherever he saw fit. For example, on the song Landmines, where he used an electric guitar as the lead instrument instead of just a generic synth, or similarly on the song No More with Eden, obviously uncredited on the vocals on that one, using an acoustic guitar as kind of the lead instrument throughout the drop. I always thought Pierce Fulton's electro sound was very unique and didn't really need any spicing up. I would have been perfectly comfortable if Pierce would have forever remained in this genre. But in the future, Pierce Fulton would inevitably look towards indie pop as his primary genre, kind of starting out, ironically, with the vocal mix Lost Time of Kuwaga, a mix that I actually was not personally crazy about. I kind of, in all honesty, kind of hated it compared to the original, probably because I just got so attached to everything and the textures that were in that song. That, though, does not mean that I straight up disapproved of everything Pierce Fulton was trying to do going into the INDIETRONICA vein. In fact, I've enjoyed most of the content he's done kind of going in that. It was just that particular vocal mix of Kuwaga that kind of got under my skin, but I've enjoyed a fair share of the content he's put out since he's kind of headed into that direction. In fact, I was a huge fan of his Borrowed Lives EP, the last big project we got before the Better Places album. I gave that EP my highest regards and even went on to be featured in my top 10 EPs of 2016 video. I still love the heck out of that EP. So with that, I obviously held very high expectations going into this album. This would typically be the spot in the review where I say something along the lines of, but did my expectations live up to reality? Not exactly. But when it comes to the case of Pierce Fulton and Borrowed Lives, Pierce did a perfect job with this thing, I can't even lie. I firmly believe, and I do not mean for this to be a diss in any kind of way, that Pierce Fulton could not have made a better attempt at a debut album. Better Places is somehow simultaneously the perfect culmination of everything Pierce Fulton has done in the past while still giving room for him to reinvent those sounds, as well as a precisely cohesive body of work. And I'm not going to totally candy coat this review because honestly, I do have my problems with this album, but when it comes to Pierce Fulton himself, him taking the concept of making an album, taking this thing and making it his, I think Pierce Fulton did a perfect job. It's as simple as that. To be fair to Pierce, though, my problems with this LP really don't go much farther than me just thinking individually some of these tracks lacked a certain level of uniqueness that I felt like more of his electro house catalog seemed to house. Most notably on the two tracks that Noosa has an official feature on, Autumn Blossom and The Sound. And that's probably largely due to the fact that I don't feel like Noosa has an extremely unique voice. I'd probably compare her heavily to Romy of the XX. In fact, I thought it was kind of funny. I think the track Autumn Blossom probably would have fit very snug in that last XX record that I reviewed, I See You. Though the lyrics of that song, for the other hand, sound like they could have come straight out of the Owl City songwriting catalog, and strangely enough, on the song The Sound, that in terms of its production, sound like it could have come straight out of one of Owl City's earlier albums. I also tried really hard to love the song 1-800-SUCCEED, largely just because I really loved the unique vocal chops on that song, but honestly, the song, in terms of its production to me, kind of sound like a cheap, like, Cashmere Cat knockoff. I think this song with a little bit wonkier production could have made something absolutely incredible, but it's probably still would have been pointing a little bit more toward Cashmere Cat, Lido, producers like that. But I will go ahead and stress this again. There was not a single track on this album that I thought was particularly bad. Sure, Pierce Fulton is very evidently drawing inspiration from a number of different places, but honestly, in the modern day, it's very hard to find albums that aren't taking inspiration from other albums in the past and other kinds of work. So so it's very excusable in this case. Another thing about Better Places that definitely works during this time of the year that might come and bite it in the butt for my end of the year countdown is its very poppy, summery vibes. Thanks to the abnormally gorgeous weather we've been having in Washington recently, I actually haven't been able to experience this album outside the context of like a really bright summery day, so honestly I don't know how this album is going to hold up through the winter, but I can probably say it will hold up better than albums like Blink-182's California, just because this album works in lieu of Pierce Fulton's life events and not just relying on the fact that it was released in the summer. As we know, Pierce Fulton was in a much darker place throughout the creation of the Borrowed Lives EP. If you guys didn't know, he got into an accident that caused his lung to get punctured, and he had a very hard time kind of finishing that EP, and that reflected heavily on the themes of the EP. I'd say even though there were songs that were a little bit brighter, like the title track, which I thought was kind of funny, I'd say that in general the EP had a little bit more of a down-tempo vibe to it. It definitely had a very dark feel to it. But on the other hand, with Better Places, Pierce Fulton is quite literally in a better place in his life. The accident is long behind him now, it's in the past. Pierce has a girlfriend who's featured all over this thing, and in general I feel like the lyrics of this album are kind of just about Pierce Fulton being happy to be alive. If you guys follow my reviews closely, you'll know that when it comes to INDIETRONICA, I tend to kind of favor and give higher ratings to the albums that deal with typically darker themes, brutal honesty, things like that, especially when it comes to artists like Eden. But when it comes to Pierce Fulton, this is just a very happy album, and, you know, I love it. I think somehow Pierce worked some magic into Better Places. I could be in the deepest, darkest hole, just put this album on, and I cannot help but smile. And as to what I was saying earlier about this album being super cohesive, that generally comes in the form of the instrumentation that's carried throughout this album. You've got the not super subtle, but also not too in-your-face electronic drums. You've got Pierce Fulton using different stringed instruments like the dulcimer, the acoustic guitar, electric guitar, bass guitar. The fact that he and Noosa are the primary vocalists that really stand out on this thing also makes it tie together pretty well. And regarding what I said about the album being this perfect culmination of different sounds that Pierce Fulton has done throughout his career, I mean, it's kind of evidence from track to track. Better Places, the title track, fittingly also featuring nudes, heavily reminds me of the last track that they did together, Borrowed Lives. Wind Shear to me kind of has an Echo Lake feel to it, and then of course there's the one that everyone has noticed, Home in August comes full circle, kind of sounding a bit like Kuwaga. I'm not trying to say that this song is a Kuwaga clone per se, at least not to the extent that his remix of When We Were Young by Dylan Francis was, but I feel like Pierce Fulton was kind of going for that. I mean, Kuwaga was released on CR2, this album was released independently. If he wanted to put out a song that kind of gives off the same vibe, bringing his whole sound full circle, he would have had to make a new song, and you know, the result of that is Home in August. Like I already mentioned, I personally love that style, so obviously when Home in August dropped as a single, I was absolutely ecstatic. Also, just within the track's name, I kind of have a personal connection to it. If you guys don't know, Pierce Fulton and I are both from New England, and it appears that we both go home in August, and I think Pierce Fulton absolutely kind of captivated the feeling of going home and that kind of euphoria in this track. And I could keep going on and on about this album, but honestly, I think the best thing to say at this point is just listen to this album for yourself. It doesn't do like this amazing job of storytelling or have this absolutely wacky, off-the-wall production, but this album does its job in terms of it just wanting to bring you to a better place, because that's what it did for me. I really personally love it, and I think you will too. For Better Places, I am feeling a light 8 out of 10. If you guys haven't listened to this yet, please check it out. You will not regret it. As always, I have the Spotify link down in the description so you guys can go listen to it. And if you have listened to it, make sure to let me know what you think down in the comment section below. If it didn't get you the same way it got me, I don't know what's up with that. It just really, I feel like, has impacted me in a very positive way. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I'm Landon Remixes, and I'll catch you later. Peace.